Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of coverage of the January 2023 monthly finals. I'm Michael Hoyp. I'm joined by James Smits. How's it going, James?
Hey, doing great. Happy to be doing this. It should be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, so we played our match earlier today, and now we're doing a little bit of commentary over it. So we thought it might be fun for everyone to get a little perspective from both our sides. I was able to record my hand camera, so you can kind of play through it through my perspective of the Red Green Goblins player, and then we can get the insight from James as he can talk about if he remembers what was in his hand or what he was thinking in that certain spot. But let's just jump right over to the decks. So, all right, the first list I have up is James's Survival Elves. So, James, you want to talk about your list? Is there anything special about it, or things that you tried, or notable inclusions or exclusions for this list?
Yeah, so I mean, this is net decking 101. This is John Gradzina's list from, I think, December, maybe November, whenever he last posted this. Gruds is somebody I know from growing up. I know he's also played this deck a lot, so I trust him on that front. For me, actually, I ended up playing this deck out of kind of chance. My first round matchup in the pod stage was against Mike Arnold, and I had three decks that I was interested in playing, and I asked him which deck I should play.
So,
I didn't specify what decks they were, just kind of like the general gist of them.
okay.
And this is where I landed. And truth be told, that game against Mike was also the first time I was playing this.
Oh,
I'd
okay.
goldfished it a lot, but
All
it
right.
was the first time I was playing elves.
All right. So you can
And
thank
there
Mike
is
Arnold for your success this month. Then.
I can thank it for my success and also just like a month of like thinking constantly,
All right.
which is interesting. It's fun. Typically I spend a lot of time as a red mage and a couple other things like that. Pretty one track mind. So this is a pretty cerebral deck.
Yeah, this is one deck that, like, I mean, it's been a mainstay in the pre-modern metagame, and I actually just don't have that much experience playing with it for sure. And so it's like, there's a very high ceiling in terms of any deck with survival, and the reps you get with it can really can give you a lot of percentage points that if you aren't familiar with it that you don't have. So
Absolutely, and I think it's how do you on any given turn maximize your mana, and which then maximizes your width
okay,
and what you can do. So yeah, it's a really interesting deck to play. I think it has, I got lucky. I didn't see a single engineered plague all month,
okay,
right? So didn't have to run into that. I didn't see a Goblin Sharpshooter until the finals. But things like things that exist on the edges for elves, like Biorhythm, I loved. It's one of my favorite cards when I was younger, but it was a true MVP this month.
okay.
That's but so other than that, the things I'd change would be to solve for something like a sharpshooter. But other than that, deck performed really well.
Okay. I'll bring up the list that I was playing. So I'm playing the Red Green Goblins list, and I mean this archetype has kind of existed for a long time. I guess the biggest meta shift is now having a couple of copies of Naturalize in the main deck, and I think that's with the increase of Stifle Knot and Parfait Oath in the metagame. The other thing to highlight here is kind of the land selection. I am playing Rishon Import, which is not always an inclusion in the Goblin list. A lot of them have been playing Wasteland. I've been really impressed with the Rishon Imports. It has worked out really well for me. It's nice to be able to kind of slow your opponent down, but then still have that mana without like sacrificing like a Wasteland would have to. And then there's also decks that have a lot of basic lands that Rishon Import will still be able to just to do something where Wasteland would not. The other note I would say is I am playing Three Ancient Tombs, which I just have been a very big fan of in Goblins. It can be very painful at times, but just there are certain draws if you just like the difference between like a turn two matron or like a turn three ringleader as compared to like the natural three or four, I think is really big. So I'm pretty high on Ancient Tomb in the Goblins list, but that's really I guess all the notable things in the inclusion.
I guess one comment I have, I've played Goblins a good amount. Love the deck. Where do you net out on the three Skirk Prospectors? Because I know probably what's sacrificed is maybe another Gem Palm Incinerator, maybe a main deck Goblin King. What brought you to the three Skirk Prospectors?
Yeah, so Goblin Tinker, Goblin King, and like Gem Holman Center
Yeah.
are kind of like those like flex spots. And I've always been really high on Skirk Prospector. And part of the reason is there are just a lot of turns like if you tap out with a Siege Gang commander and you don't have any mana, then they can. like they can either play around it for a turn or whatnot. But if you have like that Skirk Prospector in play with Siege Chain Commander, mostly is really good. And then the other situation where it comes up a lot is the turns if you have like a War Chief in play with a Matron, then you can kind of use that Matron to get what you want, and then have another mana, which really comes into play a lot of the time. So I'm really high on Skirk Prospector, and I pretty much always run 3 in almost any Goblin list that I play. So. All right.
Yeah, similar philosophy probably to the Ancient Tomb as well, right?
Yeah.
Smooths out that guaranteed turn 2 3 mana drop.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Let's jump down to the match. So the way this works, we are in the finals of this tournament, and it is seeding based. So you were the higher seed, and you got to choose to play first, which you did. So I'll just start our recording, and let me bring up my card fetcher. But yeah, so you're on the play. These pre-boarded games, another thing that I'm looking for is access to Goblin Sharpshooter. You don't have like a really great answer in the main deck, and that's kind of what I'm hoping my game plan works around.
Yeah, and for me, this was maybe the best hand I kept. The only issue is that my singular 1-drop was a Llanowar Elf, right? So I didn't have anything to play around this Mog Fanatic here.
Yep. Which is like, so I guess given that I knew I was on the draw, like Goblin Lackey draws just are not that great against Elves when you're on the draw. If you're on the play, then you might be able to remove a blocker and get in, but I almost like assume that the Goblin Lackey's never going to get through against Elves. But yeah, Mog Fanatic is probably like my best opener in this matchup because just being able to deny you mana is so important.
Yeah, and I think that's the constant kind of tension, right? I'm just trying to establish a mana advantage as quickly as possible because you probably go wide almost as well as me, unless I'm truly survival curving out. So I think that's kind of the constant pressure that I'm under, is just getting that ramp. But being able to disrupt that turn 1 Llanowar Elf just sets me back, right? Because here I am now. I've got like a turn 2 Priest, which is fine, but it's a little slower. And then it's met with the Goblin Matron on the other side of the board, so I'm at a strict disadvantage right away.
Yeah, the nice thing, like when I had this opener hand, I'm like, okay, I have a Mog Fanatic, and then I have a turn 2 Matron because of the Ancient Tomb, and me being able to get this Sharpshooter. I mean, it's going to take a little bit to get online because I'm going to have to play it next turn and then untap. But given that the way that like this game is kind of played out, I feel like that will probably be enough. I don't think there's a better card I can get from this situation. Obviously, my game plan is around this Goblin Sharpshooter in these pre-boarded games.
Totally, and again, it comes down to the fact that the Llanowar Elf isn't in play. Now my Priest is only tapping for 1, right? So again, just ramp is that much slower. Even if you can only play the Sharpshooter next turn, it's only online a turn after that. There's only so much I can do between now and then, unless my hand is truly gassy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is maybe where I got closest to curving out with the play that I'm about to make here.
Yeah, if you have like a bunch of, because I think this is where you're casting Survival.
Correct.
But if you have like a card like Quirion Ranger is like something that would be like really problematic because not only would it add an elf to the board, so it would be additional mana, but you'd have an untap for the priest. If you were to go like Quirion Ranger here, then I don't even know. I think like the Sharpshooter might just be too slow in that situation, which is like
I think,
kind of scary from my perspective.
Exactly.
That like I have a Mog Fanatic, a turn 2 Matron, and a turn 3 Gem or Goblin Sharpshooter, and it still might not be enough.
Yeah, and maybe that's a circumstance where I should have forced the issue and used Survival on my turn and gone after that Quirion Ranger. So maybe that's the line that I should have followed there. For me, I think in mind, I was just, how do I dodge the Sharpshooter?
Okay.
So I guess, I think you made this comment when we were playing as well. I went the more defensive route.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's also perhaps my naivete as an Elves player as well.
Well, it's one of those situations is like, I mean, you talked about like you've been goldfishing, but it's hard to kind of put yourself in these scenarios where like you're under some amount of pressure kind of thing. You can't really simulate that in a goldfish. So
100%. I'd never played this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it, kind of knew that Sharpshooter was, Matron into Sharpshooter is what I'm hoping to not see. Unfortunately, I saw it in this game.
Yeah, so you have 2 mana at the end of turn. You're gonna discard a Multani's Acolyte, and you're gonna go get a Squee, and then discard the Squee.
And Elvish Champion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're hoping that you can play this, and then I guess just have a turn where I'm like you're not taking damage or anything dying, and then you can go to the next turn.
Yeah, so maybe that's where the correct line actually was. Previous turn that I'm looking at, Quirion Ranger, play Priest of Titania, because then I could next turn go after Masticore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm super relieved from this position because I know I have the Skirk Prospector in hand. So
yeah, exactly.
If at nothing else, and you like build a board or whatnot, I have an untap trigger thanks to Skirk Prospector, and I think probably a lot of your turn is going to be devoted to casting this Elvish Champion. So I'm pretty relieved. Like, there's not like a Masticore getting searched up, and that you have a way to deal a bunch of mana. Because like that's probably the way if you are able to get 6 mana here with a Masticore and just kill the Sharpshooter, then you could probably take over. So
2, 4, yeah, because I would have been there. Yeah, because I would 4 from the Priest if I had a Quirion Ranger, 7, so I would have had enough to then activate the Squee. Yeah, so I could have had a Masticore and play this turn if I had a Quirion Ranger. Yeah, so GG's misplay.
Yeah, so this next turn is not going to go well. Like if I'm untapping with Sharpshooter, so you're going to use the. Oh, you thought about using the Priest, I guess, right now. And then,
I thought about it there.
And so the interesting thing here, like when I'm looking at the text, is like I have a lackey, which, like from your perspective, is still pretty scary. Like you don't want lackeys to connect because, like, you're probably always thinking like, oh, it'll be a ringleader or a siege chain commander or something, and so it's pretty awkward. So yeah, I'm thinking, I'm like, if I attack with both, is there? I mean, maybe you just attack with both there, but I just attack with the lackey because I think you just, I can't.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? In hindsight, I probably I end up blocking with the priest here, and maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have had you force the issue with finding a sack outlet. But I knew in my hand I had nothing going on. I had a Biorhythm and a Tangle Wire. I think maybe a Tangle. No, something else. Yeah, maybe a Tangle Wire. So my hand was just depleted already. Now I had the Squee, so survival theoretically can really help me out there. So in reality, I should have just taken it, forced the issue. But anyway.
Yeah, so this sequence was like,
all of a sudden my board goes.
Yeah, my lackey dies, it deals a damage to the priest, and so there's an untap trigger for the Sharpshooter, which I deal 1 to the Elvish Champion that it untaps, and then I can deal a second. And then your priest is going to die because it already had a damage on, so I get more untaps. You're kind of just saying, okay, I'm going to use this mana before everything dies for your survival activations. But kind of like the damage has pretty much been done. Like at this point, me taking elves off the board, and now you get a Masticore, but
and the hope here is that I can draw land, get a Masticore, and play. At least try to recover. If I can get to a 4th land, then I can take out the Sharpshooter, stabilize potentially. Cross my fingers that you don't have a Naturalize right off the.
Yeah,
the board,
unfortunately for you, I do have a post-combat Rishon import, so I'm
able
to play that, and I'm not too worried about this Masticore if there's nothing on the board, so I'll take a couple damage to cast this pile driver, as long as I don't really even need to add that much to the board, because I kind of have control. But yeah, pile driver is actually pretty nice just to kind of close out.
Yeah, exactly, and it means that Masticore, I don't have because now I'm going to be down to two lands, right? So I would have had to go land, Masticore, and then another turn. So 3 turns from now until a Masticore was online. So the Rashad Port helps there. The pile driver puts that clock on the board. I also think going after the mountain is the right play with the Rashad Port, because otherwise I can play a Squee, right?
Yeah.
Now you have to kill the Squee with the Goblin Sharpshooter, but
I was more thinking just like, well, if I'm porting a force, it basically makes you use a survival activation at that point, which has some benefits, but like I just figured I'd rather want to like tie up your mana a little bit more. I don't know what actually is better, but I thought the mountain there was defendable, I guess. But these are the minor things. It's like I'm already in a great position, and so things would really have to go poorly for me to lose in this spot. I'm attacking
Yeah, and
for
the only other
4.
creatures I can search up that aren't going to die instantaneously to Sharpshooter are going to be Granger and Nantuko Vigilante, right?
Hmm.
So, but I didn't have another creature that I could discard. Out, I only had the Masticore in hand as my only creature,
Okay.
so I wasn't even drawing any fodder on the survival. I don't think. Um,
Yeah.
so even to search up something that could serve as a blocker, I wasn't getting there, unfortunately.
So I have a matron, and I mean, I don't know like what the optimal thing is at this point. I think I just get a Mog Fanatic because it's something I can play, and uh, kind of apply a little bit more pressure. It makes the pile driver a lot bigger, and I do want to keep the Rishon Import because I feel like if I am going to lose, it's probably with something you spending all your mana. So
Yeah, and I think Mog Fanatic works well because it's a sack outlet then
sure,
too.
yeah,
Because at this point I still haven't seen the Skirk Prospector, right? That's in hand.
yep,
So, but that's 3 damage on the board, Sharpshooter, Mog Fanatic, Sharpshooter. So that could be the finisher as well. Because now I'm at 12. Yeah, there's enough damage on the board here. Yeah. I think that's what we,
yeah, yeah.
because you had 13 points of damage on the board. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
that's GG. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like that game went pretty much like how I hoped a pre-boarded game would go. Like it definitely revolved around Sharpshooter. You don't have like a great answer other than getting a bunch of mana and putting a Masticore down. And I kind of had all the tools, like the Mog Fanatic, like for slowing you down. Because I mean, if that first Llanowar Elves stays in play, then you easily would have enough mana, I think, to do all the things that you would want with the Priest and the Llanowar Elves. So
Absolutely. Yeah, turn 3 would have been pretty nutty for me.
yeah.
Because then I could have been more aggressive, gone right into, either really doubling down on mana strategy or have like a turn 3 Masticore in play, which feels pretty good here.
So in these pre-boarded games, like what type of draws are you hoping to open with? Is there things that you're in particular for? Do you just want a survival? Do you just want a bunch of 1-drops? Or what are you kind of hoping that the early turns happen for you?
Yeah, so a mix of lands and spells. No, definitely a survival is going to be key, right? It's just going to be able to dig up the appropriate answers. Having 2 1-drops is also going to be nice, right? So something that's the turn 1 Mog Fanatic fodder, playing a Symbiote or a Ranger that you're going to eat so that I can play that turn 2 Mana Dork.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I think so much about this advantage is just establishing a mana advantage. That's how I'm going to outpace you. So if I can, bait you into killing something else, that's going to be helpful. Yeah. This hand was. I'm trying to remember. What I kept. So I mulliganed down to 5 this game, didn't I? Yeah. So we're gonna watch me shuffle a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think I also am gonna look at my first hand. I think I'm about to see it. So my hand's pretty interesting in the spot. So a lot of times that I'm looking for is early interaction, and so I'm looking at a hand of Mountain and Wooded Foothills, Goblin Lackey, War Chief, Ringleader, and then 2 Naturalize. So like on the surface, like at first I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. I have an answer to survival. I have a lackey that you pretty much have to block. So it's kind of like a Mog Fanatic in some way, but it just is delayed a turn. And then I'm like, okay, and then I'll have like a Ringleader or whatnot. And I'm like, I don't know if you mulliganing like really changed anything for me, but I thought, I don't know, I feel like I could lose this game if the game goes on a few turns and you like waited for a survival and got a bunch of activations out of it, because I don't interact that well. And part of the reason is like I think my pre-boarded games, like I'm pretty favored. Like I have a lot of like my ability to get Sharpshooter and play it like without you like responding to it is should be pretty consistent, I guess. So I actually send this back. So yeah,
And we talked about this during the match.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. I think if you are one-tracked mind on Matron into Sharpshooter and you have the lands to cast it, you should be going for that route. So that it's worth sacrificing. Otherwise, good hand for that pathway, just because it's so dominant in this matchup.
And I mean, there's still like even if I find a 6-card hand that doesn't quite have exactly that, there still are a lot more like just Mog Fanatics or Gem Palm Incinerators. I think do a lot of work of in the early turns and of slowing you down. So
Totally. Yeah, and because that previous hand, I think, the most interaction it had were the two naturalizes.
Yeah, I mean,
Now it's,
you could
it
kind of
has the
say that
lackey,
like
but you're on
lackey.
the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but you're on the draw there as well, right? So, to your earlier point, I'm going to have something to get in the way of that lackey.
yeah. All right, so I'm looking at a second hand, and I have
Nutty.
the natural sharpshooter and a Mog Fanatic. So it's like, all right, well, this is I just
GG.
need a third mana, and I'm very very excited about this hand. I put a ringleader on the bottom, and then you're mulliganing again. So
Yeah, and it was, the first hand I saw, the first seven, it was an elf, a Llanowar Elf, a Quirion Ranger, a Masticore, and four lands. And the problem is, like, any one piece of disruption just totally derails that. Right?
okay,
It's like, great, if you're not going to interact with me, turn three Masticore, perfect. But I just know inevitably you're going to have something to disrupt that flow. So I had to pitch that back. The second hand I saw was three Gaea's Cradles, which is just really useless.
so much
Not
mana.
what you want to see. Exactly. Well, yeah, except
Yeah,
when his sharpshooters on the board, so
yeah,
little mana.
yeah. So
Uh,
is Survival Elves a deck that you did you mulligan a lot in the tournament? Like, are you and I guess it's probably different in the top eight, like when you know what you're playing against, as compared to in the dark. Do you think the deck mulligans well, or is it just like a situation where you kind of know how the game is going to play out because of like the weight of sharpshooter?
it's an interesting mulligan deck. In this matchup, I knew it was very weighted towards sharpshooter and just being able to outpace it. In the previous rounds, I did mulligan a lot.
Mhm.
I probably went to 75% of my matches at least once. And look, the deck can survive on one land, which is one of its advantages. But if you're looking at a hand that's just, four mana dork s cards and three lands, it's actually not a very productive hand. Like, sure, you can produce some mana on turn two or turn three, but it's not going to get you very far. It just doesn't have any real gas to it.
Okay.
So that's kind of it's no longer a mix of lands and spells. It's a mix of, like, mana dork, land, and something that gassy or something that can interact with you.
Yep. So you were kind of skipping ahead. Like, I'm using a fanatic before you actually put a card into play. So I think you said like, yeah,
Yeah, this
literally
is
from hand to graveyard. I you had a Llanowar Elves at the ready, but yeah, I had Mog Fanatic to answer it, and I drew a mountain, so I know that I'm going to have this at least a turn three sharpshooter. So things are looking good for me. Yeah, you have a Quirion Ranger, and you looks like you don't have a second land. Um,
yeah.
and so you just
And
untap
this
and
was
play.
that because I only had the one land. So this was a Mulda 5.
Hmm.
That's where I felt that I needed to lead out with the elf. And kind of hope you don't have that turn one interaction so that I can have a bigger turn two. Because again, I just need to try to outpace.
Yeah.
Because I think I do have a survival in hand. Um, yeah.
Here's a spot where I'm like pretty happy to have port like that. I'm not doing anything on turn two and just spending my turn to slow you down a little bit. I mean, it probably is not a huge hindrance, but I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like a lot of times you're not doing anything otherwise. So happy
No,
to.
I think it is valuable here though, because with my current setup, I have two mana. Right, I
Mhm.
can play survival.
Mhm.
Unless I draw another land, if you can port my forest, I have access to one mana right now. So again, it just delays that plan of trying to outpace you.
Mhm.
So it's super effective here.
Yeah.
Here I am just attacking.
Yeah.
Because
So
by this point, I'd gone runner, runner, Tangle Wire draw. Um, so now I'm like, if I can get to three mana, maybe I can do something. But then the bomb comes down on the board.
so tangle wiring a sharpshooter could be kind of exciting
Yeah.
if you actually get to tap it. But all right, so you're stalled, and at this point, I have a sharpshooter. I mean, like, I don't even know. I guess if you had Elvish Champion
Land
like right here,
survival.
like
Yeah.
yeah, like
I don't have enough mana. I don't have access to Elvish
oh,
Champion mana.
that's true, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I missed the land drop. I mean, if I
Hmm.
had a. Yeah.
The Kieran Ranger's gonna attack. I did not. I did chose not to block. Uh,
I know, boy.
yeah.
That was my best laid plan right there. I really tried to bait you into that one.
Yeah, so Gaia's Cradle, not on time, given that you get one activation and then probably all your creatures are going to die. You have a Multani's Acolyte, so at least this will draw a card, I guess, before it dies.
Exactly, and that was what I was just trying to get into here, was to just dig a bit deeper, find a bit more. Now I know that I'm going to be on 1 mana again because Sharpshooter is going to eat my guys. So it's, can I like at least ramp my land situation?
Mm-hmm. All right, so I target your Quirion Ranger. I think you're thinking whether you want to pick up your forest.
Yeah. But at this point, because I also have a Masticore in my hand, now I'm just trying to go, can I go runner, runner, runner into playing a Masticore? Uh, Surprise, this deck does not do that.
So I took
And also, yeah.
a short consideration of just like porting you in your upkeep and not playing to the board, but given that I would have to wait, like my next play would be Goblin Matron and then port you, and then something like I'm just like, all right, I'll take a turn off and I'll just put this Ringleader into play.
Yeah, I
But
mean, and how much can I actually do,
yeah,
right? Unless I
yeah,
have if I have a survival in hand, I play a forest, but like, what's the survival actually gonna get me? It's gonna take a while for that to ramp with no like additional mana
yeah. The
sources.
majority of your plays just tied to Sharpshooter, so uh,
Yeah.
the Ringleader comes through. I drew a War Chief and a Matron, and now I draw a Pile Driver. So with this War Chief, I'm at least able to deploy a War Chief and a Pile Driver. I could do a War Chief and a Matron, or I could do Matron and a Pile Driver. Here I go.
I have to say, War Chief into Pile Driver is one of my favorite plays in Magic history.
Okay, so here I'm just using all my mana, playing the Matron this turn. I don't remember. I mean, you could argue a bunch of different stuff. I think I'm
This
saying
is
I'm
me
like,
conceding. Yeah.
yeah,
What did I have? Masticore, Fyndhorn Elf, and 3 Tangle Wires.
yeah, yeah. I was saying I'm
Yeah.
like, this is one of the situations where like I'm way ahead, but I'm just like trying to figure out what the best like situation of like if something went terribly wrong, you're like, let's just not waste our time. I'm not coming back from this one. Uh, so
Yeah, and because I guess you could, yeah, because you matron for a Pile Driver, and then you have another Pile Driver and a War Chief in hand. So next turn you have lethal. Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna go back to the deck list and we can talk about sideboarding a bit. Let's look at your list first. So, did you have a sideboard plan coming in, or what are you kind of looking
I
at
thought
this?
about it before the match. So I knew, look, your go wide strategy as well. Biorhythm's not going to be impactful here. I also felt that Tangle Wire wasn't going to slow you down given that go wide. I thought that Winter Orb was going to be more effective than Tangle Wire. So, I took out those 6, plus I ended up taking out Nantuko Vigilante as well, so that I can bring in 2 Winter Orbs, Masticore, Sharpshooter. Um, what else did I bring in? Spike Feeder, um, something else, I think. I brought in 7 cards. Just basically, the Spike Feeder 2/2 life. Then taking the Nantuko Vigilante out, sure, I lose like a 3/2, so a body. Oh, and I bring in another Elvish Champion as well.
Okay.
So, I thought Winter Orb was going to be good if I could get it out. Other than that, it was just about, trying to bring some more solutions into play. And another Color of the Claw as well.
Okay. I do have some good cards to bring in. I have 3 copies of Pyrokinesis, and I have an extra Gem Palm Incinerator. Those ones I am pretty excited to bring in. I thought about like maybe the Goblin King, since you do have a mountain that you often will get. Um, I don't end up bringing in a Goblin King. That could be something that could be worth it, but I'm bringing in the other 2 Naturalize on the draw. I was thinking on the play that I might have a third one in, and or just 3, and might change and try to be like a little bit more aggressive. And I think the cards I take out, so I take out the Goblin Pile Drivers in this matchup because I figure um, that they either get blocked, or if like the board's clear, it doesn't really matter. Like I don't really need to close in a way. It's kind of like I can just attack with whatever. So I know in this top 8, like I played a lot of goblins and then this elves. So I boarded out my pile drivers a lot, which I don't think my opponents did in the mirrors very much. But I'm not sure if that's like the normal and what people have done in the past. But I was pretty happy with boarding out a lot of the pile drivers. Yeah, so I'm bringing in 6 cards. The other cards I think I take out are a Ringleader and a Siege Gang for the other
Yeah.
2 Naturalize. So I was a
I
little bit
like the
worried
move of
about.
taking the pile drivers out.
Okay,
I
I
think
was a
it's
little bit
smart.
worried about a card like Winter Orb, like um, getting in a spot if you like go Elf into Winter Orb or something that I'm just not able to develop. So I wanted access to 4 copies of Naturalize, and I mean like they're not bad because you want to draw Survival too. So uh, I was pretty happy with having the 4 copies of Naturalize. All right, looks like we're shuffling up and about to start our first sideboarded game. So, yeah, I mean, I mean, my deck gets better, but I mean, like at least now you have a quicker interaction with like a sharpshooter. So the times that I just like tap out and pass a turn with a sharpshooter and play like might not be as good, but like having a card like Pyrokinesis is just uh, probably just a nightmare for you.
Oh, absolutely. And at the end of the day, still my deck does not have that much interaction for a sharpshooter once it's in the board
Okay.
on the board. I have my own sharpshooter. I can go that route. I have 2 Masticores. Masticores are mana intensive, right? So by the time you have a sharpshooter online, like I maybe have Masticore
Mhm.
mana. So it's tough. I think it's kind of my strategy doesn't change as much, and your deck only becomes stronger here.
Mhm. All right, so I think you're looking at your hand. I don't remember if you said keep right away. Um, and I am very happy with what I'm seeing. Because I have 2 mana. One of them is green with a Naturalize. I have a Mog Fanatic and a Pyrokinesis, and like pretty much like I feel like I have all my bases covered. Yeah, and you're sending yours back, and like
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited. Like I'll say keep. I'm like there's not too much. Like I would have to draw pretty poorly off the top of the deck for things to really go wrong because I kind of have both edges of like a Naturalize for a survival, which is one aspect I'm worried about, and then if you were to flood the board with a bunch of creatures, then I have Pyrokinesis. So I'm thinking there's a situation. I'm like, okay, so is there ever a time where I don't want to like lead off with Mog Fanatic, or if you play like a turn 1 elves that I kind of want to just like I don't think I would want to play Mog Fanatic and pass because then it's pretty telling that I have a Pyrokinesis, and then you can kind of play around it. Um, so I thought about like, what if I just opened with Skirk Prospector and then kind of have you like develop like hopefully vomit a bunch of creatures on the board to make my Pyrokinesis better. I think that's probably just getting too greedy, and it's probably just better to lead with the Mog Fanatic and take out anything you play. But those are the
Yeah,
types of
and
things
I
is
think
like
that's.
I was like
I
sometimes
think
like
it's
once my
yeah.
opponent's like mulliganing or whatnot, like I'll think about these corner cases things and like I think it's interesting to think about or consider because a lot of times your natural tendency is just play Mog Fanatic and kill their Llanowar Elves or whatever, and every now and then it might be better to do something different. So
Yeah, and it also just shows how powerful pyrokinesis is in this matchup as well, right?
yes, yeah, that you're
Yeah.
afford to make like suboptimal plays just to get an advantage later.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it's the cat and mouse, right? It's the thing is, I think in this matchup, your deck doesn't need to try to bait me as much, right? Because you can be very singularly focused
Mhm.
in your path to victory. I think I'm thinking not super thrilled about what I'm seeing, but it's either this or go to 5 again. And what's my deck really going to do if I can go to 5? It's going to be kind of one trick pony that a single piece of disruption is going to be able to rip out. Unfortunately.
All right, so you're gonna lead off with a forest and a Llanowar Elves.
At least I'm consistent.
Yes, but unfortunately for you, I am also consistent in having the Mog
Yeah.
Fanatic. Yep, so once again, the Mog Fanatic takes out the turn 1 Llanowar Elves, and I drew a CJ Commander, so a card that, like, if I get to that point, can close out the game kind of quick, but it might be just a card that I pitched to Pyrokinesis, actually, so. You have a
Yeah, I
Quirion
think
Ranger, and
we're looking at some fodder.
yeah, you're picking up a forest, so it looks like you're light on land, and then you have a Fyndhorn Elves, so.
Yeah, it's just your pyrokinesis starts glowing red hot.
I always like to ask this to people. Are you consciously playing like Llanowar Elves before Fyndhorn Elves, or is it just Like I'd
Yeah, I
rather
mean,
have this one
definitely.
die. Like,
Llanowar Elf is like a much better looking card. The new reprinted foil Fyndhorn Elves is cool. I just don't play with foils, so
okay,
that doesn't impact me as much. But yeah, I definitely consciously played the Llanowar Elf before the Fyndhorn Elf just because it's way cooler.
okay. I've got
Both
a
are
turn.
signs, so who knows?
I got a turn 2 lackey, and I leave the Skirk Prospector in my hand because that will give me a card to potentially pitch to Pyrokinesis. So that's the reason why I'm not deploying that card.
And this is maybe the strongest my board position has been this entire match.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so now I have a survival that I can play out, and I can really start ramping on that front.
And I think that's okay. So you have a Cradle that taps for 2, and then you do have a survival. So you have access to 1, 2. You've played a land, so potentially 3 mana, I guess, if you use the Quirion Ranger. So yeah, you pass a turn. I'll wait. Like, I mean, if I'm gonna pitch a card for Pyrokinesis, I might as well wait. So here I have the luxury where I'm able to use the Naturalize here, and you make your activations with the assumption that you're gonna get to untap with these creatures in play, which
Yeah.
I think is actually like really different. Like if I Pyrokinesis first, then the cards that you get I think are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was
No, it's
just
the correct order of operations.
yeah, this was just like icing on the cake for me that I'm able to kind of so you're getting an Elvish Champion and a Squee, um, and I'm able to okay, I'll exile a Goblin War Chief and now I'll kill your mana, and I get to get in with a Goblin Lackey. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and now the Siege Gang still in hand.
mhm.
Really just go wide. I'm going to be left with nothing on my board, a forest, and a now useless Cradle.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Not looking good for one of our heroes.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the sequence that I've had, all 3 of these games have just been they've lined up like perfectly for what you were trying to do, and yeah, you're in a spot where if I'm untapping, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know what you would have, even if I wasn't able to untap.
Yeah, and I didn't have any 1-drops in hand here.
Yeah.
So there's just nothing I could do to try to ramp it up.
Yeah, so sieging and the tokens and the lackey come in. I get to put a war chief into play, and now
Pretty
my
good.
goblin matron's turned on, and I'm gonna go get
Only one thing to get.
a sharpshooter. I think is
Yeah.
yeah. So
I think you still do that. You could get the pile driver and get greedy and go for it, but
yeah,
it would have an acolyte, a collar of the claw, winter orb, something. Yeah, just nothing I could get done there.
yeah. It's so kind of a beating. I mean, like I knew on paper I felt like the goblins deck was pretty advantaged, but the way they played out, like I don't know if this is representative of what the normal is, but the games I felt like my draws were very good. The way that they shaped up to be. So
And that was some of the messaging I got after the matches. Some Elves players reached out saying this is exactly what they expected.
okay.
Unfortunately, I think look in retrospect, game 1 I have a better line that I don't deploy,
Mm-hmm.
like the Quirion Ranger into an actual Masticore that I could have had in play. So I think I could have given myself a fighting chance there, especially with only one sharpshooter main for you. Um, but yeah, games 2 and 3 I think just played out exactly how I expected them to.
Yeah, and
Unfortunately.
the sequences you kind of talked about, like where you are able to get mana and survival, and that usually leads to Masticore. Those are usually the games that the Goblins deck will lose against Elves, is if they're able to keep your board and have a bunch of mana. And I mean, like even it was close. Like even after me using a Mog Fanatic on a Llanowar Elves, you having a Priest just opens up a lot of opportunities for you to have a really explosive turn. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
interesting
the
for
key with
that
Priest is
aspect.
Priest plus 1 elf,
Yeah.
right? So if you can start establishing that mana advantage by having an untapper as well, where it just kind of increases exponentially, super powerful. Just couldn't quite get there.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that will. I'll move to this screen ending scene, but yeah, we'll kind of conclude like. I mean, on paper, I was excited that it was an Elves matchup. I mean, I knew, given that it was you, I'm like, well, there might be a way that you find have a game plan, and so I thought there's definitely a possibility that you would have a game plan that might be able to beat me. So I wasn't like super confident in terms of like I knew things could go wrong. But yeah, the ways that luck was definitely favoring me today with all those Mog fanatics, and yeah, it was. I mean, the match like finished in like 40 minutes or something. It was quite a beating. So
Yeah, it was just brutal. Yeah, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, I knew there was a lot you could do that would impact me, and there was very little I could do to impact you.
mhm.
And going into a matchup like that is super tough. Even when you look down at a gassy hand, probably game one was the best hand I had. I actually kept seven that game as well. It gave me an opportunity, but a turn one Mon Fnatic can really set you back.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll pretty much wrap up, I guess, our coverage of this finals. But I do want to thank you, James, for coming on and going through this. Hopefully, people enjoy this, and maybe we can collaborate in the future and do some coverage of other matches. But yeah, it's always nice. I always like kind of diving in and going in. This matchup, I think, was pretty straightforward. Like you look at the hands, it's like I think most people would make a lot of the same plays that I did. But there's definitely situations when you have a hand camera kind of showing like every available option, then things get convoluted real quick. So it's interesting to see like dissect kind of game plan and talk about that stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is fun. Happy to always do this. This was a blast.
all
And
right.
congrats to our, January 2023 Premodern Monthly champion.
All right, thank you very much. But yeah, thanks again for joining me, and then yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. But until next time, take care.